Chinese President Xi Jinping has called on world leaders to work together towards the recovery of the global economy following the coronavirus pandemic. Xi made the comments via video link at the annual World Economic Forum. The Chinese president emphasised that countries should promote strong, sustainable, balanced and inclusive growth of the world economy. China is one of the only mega economies that reported positive GDP growth in 2020. The WEF says global GDP has fallen by 4.2% since the pandemic began. And China's leader says multilateralism can help mitigate the effects of the pandemic.
Fighting the epidemic is the most urgent task facing the international community. This is not only the basic requirement of adhering to the supremacy of the people and the supremacy of life, but also the basic prerequisite for stable economic recovery. We must deepen unity and cooperation, strengthen information sharing and joint prevention and control, and resolutely win the battle against the global epidemic.
Well, let's get more now from Jeremy Jurgens, who's the Managing Director at the World Economic Forum. He joins us now from Geneva in Switzerland. Welcome to the program, Jeremy. Now, can I start by asking you about Xi Jinping's comments at the Davos agenda? A lot of his remarks did seem like they were aimed at the United States, even though he didn't really mention the US explicitly. How do you think that relationship between the US and China will change now that Joe Biden is president in America?
Yeah, thank you. I'd expect that, the President Xi reinforced the importance of multilateralism and global cooperation. And this is pretty much the same message that he brought to Davos in 2017. Now, one could argue that the last 4 years have been anything but cooperation or multilateralism in many countries. There's kind of a trend away from globalization, focus on domestic priorities across many countries. And we've seen that play out at the electorate level in quite a few places. Now, as we look ahead to a new presidency in the US under Joe Biden, we can expect that in some domains we can anticipate a greater cooperation and a return to multilateralism. We see this with the agreement to return to the Paris Accords, to start funding the WHO again. And all of these are crucially important in areas where China and the US will cooperate and find good means to do so. I would suspect, though, that there are a number of other areas that will continue to see a relationship that has underlying frictions that are longer term, whether this is in trade, whether this is in technology, and some of the other areas. So it'll be a mixed kind of outlook going ahead, and the individual personalities, both of the top leaders as well as their deputies, will be critically important to, say, reinforce the underlying cooperation that President Xi called for today.
Of course, this year's Davos summit isn't happening at that famed Swiss ski resort. It's all happening virtually because of the pandemic. What's the main theme of this year's gathering, and what do you hope to achieve by the end of the week?
Yeah, this year's theme is around a crucial year to rebuild trust. 2020 has been unlike anything that most of us experienced in our lifetimes. And one of the areas that we saw faltering throughout the year was a trust of people in their elected leaders, trust in the underlying systems, and in many cases feeling let down by what was put in front of them. And this led to misunderstandings and, say, continued economic and social crises throughout the world in different countries. Now, this week, one of the aspects that we've really focused on is bringing the most knowledgeable and credible leaders together to share their perspectives, to exchange on some of the developments that have been made in the last year, but also in some of the opportunities that we can look forward into the year ahead. And concretely here, we're looking at everything from efforts around reskilling and education, around addressing the health crisis around the pandemic, as well as how do we build towards a net zero economy. So each day we're highlighting a number of themes, and I invite everybody to follow closely as there will be new announcements each day throughout the week.
And we know this pandemic has really exacerbated the existing economic inequalities across the globe. For example, some of the world's richest people have only got richer, while many millions around the world have lost their livelihoods. Others have been plunged into poverty. How do you even begin to address those inequalities?
Yeah, I believe you have to address this at a couple different levels, and let me name three. I think first is looking at the macroeconomic structure and the relationship between the financial situation, fiscal situation in each country, and the underlying economy. Of course, when the economies are shut down, when trade flows halt, logistics and supply chains are disrupted, this has a ripple effect throughout the entire economy, and it's quite, challenging at both the individual level and the state level. So rebuilding those connections and ensuring that we can, keep the economy running is extremely important. And this has to happen at a very senior level. There's then what takes place at the individual level, right? How do we make sure that each individual that would like to be can be vaccinated, that they have access to health care? And as there's been a significant disruption in jobs and employment opportunities, how do we ensure that people can be reskilled at an individual level? And the third area I'd highlight is the role of innovation and improvements. It's a really positive story, what we've seen with the mRNA vaccines and some of the other vaccine opportunities, where global cooperation has allowed people to bring a vaccine into the market faster than has ever been done previously. At the start of the crisis, some people expected that this could take years, decades, or may even not even be done. And yet we see a very successful rollout. We can imagine this type of innovation rolling out across every sector of the economy and every sector of the society, and being focused on improving the quality of lives and the opportunities for individuals.
Now, as you mentioned, the climate crisis is one of the themes that will be discussed at this year's Davos gathering, and it comes ahead of a major UN climate summit that's due to happen in Glasgow in November. Are you worried that perhaps countries around the world will prioritise action on the pandemic and the ensuing economic damage over the climate crisis?
No, actually, I see these as going hand in hand. Clearly, we have to address the crisis now, but in many cases, we're seeing that the investments in, say, transforming the economy into a net zero economy actually will also create a number of employment opportunities and job opportunities along with it. Similarly, we've seen the benefits from cooperation and just how quickly the world leaders can move when they focus their attention on the crisis. So I actually entered 2021, quite optimistic for the opportunities around this. We've seen the political commitments to net zero economies in countries around the world. Businesses are increasingly also making their own independent commitments. And while we don't necessarily see all the steps necessary to reach the goals for, say, 2030, 2050 and beyond, we see a path to reach there. So I'm actually optimistic that by the time we meet in November for the COP26 summit, that we'll have made significant progress and have clear roadmaps on how to move forward.
Okay, Jeremy Jurgens, Managing Director of the World Economic Forum. Best of luck for the rest of the Davos summit, and thank you again for joining us on the program.